Hey guys, so I wanted to make a quick video on kind of explaining a way of thinking about whenever you're applying to, let's say, a competitive program, whether it's medical school or let's say a competitive PhD program, anything that has a low probability for each trial, so each application. So anything that has a low probability of acceptance per application. I wanted to make a video that's explaining exactly what does the mathematics look behind that. A lot of times people are kind of unsure of like which schools they should apply to and how many schools they should apply to. And I'm certainly not giving any advice really in terms of that or whether or not you should apply. So I mean, I think people should apply whether or not they feel like they really want a career in that, whether they're truly familiar with what that career entails. And then as well as the places that they apply to, they should kind of pay attention to, all right, what do each of these different programs have to offer? But if you're just looking from the standpoint of, okay, let's say you have an average success rate of, let's say, 5% of getting a 5% chance of getting accepted per application. Okay, how many schools do you need to apply to get, let's say, greater than 70% chance of getting accepted to at least one school in a given year? A lot of people maybe ask themselves these questions, but they're not really familiar with maybe the stats. I'm not like insulting anyone, but like it's what it is it's a binomial probability calculator. So I just want to kind of show someone like what you can do. You can fiddle around with like different like hypotheses, different probabilities, kind of using this tool. So I just typed in StatTrak binomial probability calculator. And if you go to stattrek.com, this is a free resource, by the way. It has a couple of different inputs that it's asking of you. Some of these you probably don't really need. What you're looking for is, let's say, you're looking for how many schools or programs you have to apply to get accepted to at least one, basically. What are the odds of getting accepted to at least one, giving that probability for each trial? So you're assuming the same probability, 5% of acceptance for all the admissions, okay? So let's say probability of success on a single trial. So you can vary, you can play around with different numbers depending on how competitive the schools are or depending on how competitive you think you are as a candidate. But let's say even if you go for a conservative approach or something, let's say there's a 5% chance of getting accepted to just per school. So every school you apply to, there's a 5% chance. Okay, well, let's say you apply to 20 different schools, okay? And maybe some of them you have a 10% chance, maybe some of them you have a 2% chance. So you kind of have a varied set of schools in terms of how competitive they are that you're applying to. And then, so they average out to 5% in this example. So 5%, 20 trials, number of successes. Well, let's say you only need one. So this is the probability of getting accepted to at least one. If you hit calculate here, it's this one that you're looking for. So probability that the number of successes is greater than or equal to X, whatever you entered here. So what's the probability that it's at least one? And you see in that first year, if you applied to a bunch of schools and you had a 5% chance of success on a single trial, you applied to 20, there's a 64% chance that you would get accepted to at least one. Let's say you're pretty competitive. What happens if you put that up to 0.7? So I mean, like, there's obviously a lot of variables that this maybe doesn't capture, but this is a good way of thinking about it. If you're kind of trying to calculate that on your head, like, okay, what are my odds if I'm applying to all these different schools? You can kind of play around with different numbers here and get a sense. Because one thing I would hate is for people to maybe get discouraged from applying to some of these programs that are more competitive because they're thinking about maybe the chance of success on a single trial and they think that's impossible. When in fact, it might be likely that you get accepted to one, even if there's a low probability of success on a single trial. So let's say you apply to 10 schools, you have a 7% chance, so like 1 in 14%, 1 in 14 chance of success on any given trial. It's pretty low on any given trial, but you apply to 10 different schools. Well, you're about 50-50 on that. But what happens if you do that 2 years in a row? So let's take that 0.51, and let's just do 2 years. You did the same thing, you applied to 10 schools, 2 years in a row. Okay, well now you have a 76% chance over those 2 years. So a lot of people think like maybe I'm not going to apply because it's just so unlikely, it's never going to happen. It's really useful to kind of just think for a second and maybe like, it may be likely that you get accepted to at least one school, and that may be all you need. So I just wanted to make this video in case anyone was kind of struggling with that thought. I know I was when I was applying to grad schools and looking, thinking, am I competitive enough? This certainly doesn't answer everything, but I think it's a useful tool. So thanks, and I hope you got something out of this.